I'm really pleased to welcome Elliot Lyne up to the stage. Elliot is the CEO of Norfolk Wildlife Trust, and he's going to be discussing how the Trust have been navigating the new nature markets to help some of Norfolk's most threatened habitats.
Thank you very much, Mike, and hello everyone. Nice to be here today. I'm going to see if I can work my slides first of all. So yes, what I'm going to cover, initially some principles as we see it about how we can support the delivery of nature recovery. I think we're in a slightly different position to other organisations that maybe you've heard from today, and my examples will be at the less complex end of the spectrum, I think, which is where we are as an organisation currently. There's space for lots of, I think, solutions in this marketplace, and I'll be outlining some of the ways and 3 particular case studies where we've been implementing both as a landowner, maybe as a consultant, or maybe as a partner. I'm going to talk a little bit about landscape vision for our South Norfolk claylands, and then some comments. I can't avoid having these kind of conversations without some comments on government policy at the moment. I'll try and make them positive, and a little bit of a look forwards. But first, a quick introduction to Norfolk Wildlife Trust. So for those of you who don't know, we're the oldest wildlife trust, coming up to our centenary. 99 years, 1926 we were founded, so 2026 is a very special year for us, and you'll see in the top right-hand corner a sneak preview of our centenary branding. We've just hit our 40,000 members, so highest ever membership as an organisation. The other thing I'd like to bring to your attention, we're being very active in the land acquisition space at the moment, so we've got about 400 hectares, almost 1,000 acres of land in our pipeline, which is a really exciting opportunity coming up to our centenary year. So what is our focus? I think we're trying to position ourselves as an organisation to be a partner for people, to do this on our own land, but to start to advise others on how to bring nature recovery into the wider landscape. So classically, the John Lawton principles that we've slightly changed to improve, expand and connect. So absolutely we're focused on improving the abundance and diversity of wildlife across Norfolk, expanding the area of land managed. That's our land, but other people's land as well, and critically connecting those wild spaces. And I'll talk a bit in a minute about how we need strategies to do that. And the importance of a strategic approach is my first principle. You may have heard Jen talking earlier about the local nature recovery strategy. We think it's absolutely critical that to get the best results for nature, the best bang for our buck for investment in nature, we need to do it strategically. So the map on the left there is directly taken from the local nature recovery strategy, which is, I think, about to be published this week or next week. And there's a launch event, is there not, in Carlton Marshes next week, which is very exciting. So a really exciting piece of work, and those green areas are the areas that could become important areas for biodiversity. So you can see there's a lot of potential in Norfolk for delivering nature improvement. The other very exciting strategy on the right-hand side is the Greater Norwich Green Infrastructure Strategy. So it really focuses on that sweet spot between active places and natural places where we can have multifunctional green infrastructure. Greater Norwich comes with funding. It's the area of Norwich and South Norfolk and Broadland. So one of the critical things I think for us is where can we intervene that forwards an existing strategy. And critically also, doing so in collaboration, not competition. And I think one of the takeaways for me from today, and indeed last year's landscape conference, was the sheer amazing variety of things that are happening in Norfolk. I regularly stand on these kind of stages and say that I think Norfolk is a national leader in these kind of things, and we should be positioning ourselves in that way. It should be something that we're very proud of. It should be something we see as an economic and social driver of our county. So the outcomes that we're trying to deliver are partly about financial benefit for landowners, but they also deliver public benefit. So I think our starting point really should be collaboration, not competition. It's not always going to be the case, but there's so many actors here, there's so much potential that I think we could deliver something truly groundbreaking as a county. So, onto some initial case studies. We as an organisation own land. That's been the primary focus of the organisation for 99 years. We have 5,000 hectares of land, some of the most precious habitats, so not always land that is directly comparable to the farm landscape in Norfolk. But what we have been trying to do is to expand our land holdings. So this is a case study of Foxley Wood, which is in mid-Norfolk. So Foxley Wood is Norfolk's largest ancient woodland, which on the chart on the mid right is the sort of blue area. It's been the same in the bottom left since Faden's map of Norfolk in 1797. You can see the shape is exactly the same. We've recently purchased 2 parcels of land, which are outlined in red in that bottom middle chart, bottom middle picture there, from neighbouring farmers to deliver the biggest expansion of that ancient woodland probably in the last 950 years. We've utilised nutrient neutrality credits from Natural England to do that, and the land was fully funded through that scheme, which is a very exciting scheme. And I suppose one of my takeaways at the end is that was our first toe in the water of using the biodiversity and nature markets, and we started relatively small, and we're now working on a much larger scheme, which I can't talk about at this particular point, but should be something coming to fruition in the next few months. And I think critically, the chart in the top middle there shows a zoom into that LNRS map that we showed earlier, and the green shading around the blue Foxley Wood is those areas that could become important for biodiversity. So what we're doing effectively is bringing that to fruition. The LNRS is telling us that's where you should be investing for nature because it buffers an ancient woodland and national nature reserve. And we're doing that. So the chart on the bottom right there shows the scheme. It's natural regeneration with some clump planting. It will be wood pasture generation over many years, and in 250 years' time, that'll probably be looking and feeling like an ancient woodland. And back to that green infrastructure point, and I think part of what we see our role as is delivering co-benefits. So as a landholder, we're not necessarily interested as others might be in the financial benefits, but we're interested in the co-benefits because that's our charitable purpose. So this is green infrastructure in action. So again, on that chart in the top middle, you can see the loopy blue bit that comes around. That's the Marriott's Way. And so you can effectively now walk from Norwich or cycle from Norwich all the way to Foxley without going on a road. So real sort of demonstration of green infrastructure in action. So a good example, I think, of how we've utilised biodiversity markets to deliver not just a return for ourselves to purchase the land, but also public benefit and social benefit. The next example is a fantastic example working with the brilliant Langley Abbey Environment Programme, and great to see them here today. This is a really exciting scheme towards the southeast of Norwich. So we're basically working in partnership, effectively as a contractor on this one, with Langley Abbey to deliver meadow creation as part of a biodiversity net gain scheme. So again, the LNRS has mapped these areas as areas that could become of particular importance to biodiversity, back to that strategic focus, focusing on the areas of particular importance. And the landowners have got the BNG secured and are investing to create that habitat. We've done the baseline botanical surveys, the ground preparation, the seeding, and we're trying to use seed sources from other sites that we have or have access to create authentic landscape scale grassland recovery in this particular area of South Norfolk. So a really interesting scheme, not an area we own, but an area that we're working with the landowner on. So the final one is almost the simplest, but I think often is the one that people forget about. And so we're one of many organisations delivering a district level licensing pond restoration. And if you talked to the Norfolk Ponds Project who are here today, they'll tell you this is the best thing you can possibly do for nature on your farm. It's the cheapest, it's the easiest, it delivers the best and biggest benefit in the shortest amount of time. So do go and talk to Carl Sayer, who's probably here somewhere, about that. So we're a delivery agent along with Norfolk FWAG and Norfolk County Council of Natural England's district level licensing scheme. Effectively, this is taking developer money and ploughing it into pond restoration on farms. Norfolk, you can't really see all you can see on that right-hand chart is the density of purple blobs. So there are 23,000 ponds and probably double that number of ghost ponds or extant ponds in the landscape. A really important potential intervention. So basically, we are contracted to deliver a certain amount of that each year, and the scheme pays basically for the whole lot. So we can do a free site visit, all the surveys, coordinating and managing all the contractors, and all of those things are things that massively contribute to landscape scale habitat recovery. So I think 3 examples of there is how as an organisation we are dipping our toes in the water. They're much simpler examples than others you have seen today, but I think actually in this marketplace there's a really room for interventions that have low barriers to entry that anyone can do on a small farm. And that often what we see is this is the first step, the first toe in the water, and then bigger things might come of it. So trying to put all that together, so I guess my key points before I move on, really important for us. So I'm thinking about this from my lens as an organisational landowner effectively. Keep it simple, develop the organisational learning, dip your toe in the water in a low risk way, take the learning and move on to higher things. So we're trying to keep it as simple as possible for ourselves, and we're encouraging the people we're advising to do that as well. Start small and build. Foxley was our first scheme at Foxley was the first thing we did, and then another piece of land came on, so we looked at that one as well, and now we're looking at something much bigger because we've demonstrated that we can deliver this, and we have partners who we're working with to do that. And a sort of intention, I suppose, is my final point. Where we as an organisation are interested in multiple benefits. We're interested in the financial benefit, but also the social and the economic benefit. We want to prove a business case, I suppose, to decision makers in Norfolk that nature's worth investing in. And I think these kind of conferences are really important for seeing the amount of people that are here and the amount of economic and social benefit that we can drive through investing in nature, which is one of the things that makes Norfolk so special. So what we're trying to do is bring all that together in the Claylands area of South Norfolk. Had a couple of conversations today with people about saying, it's great that we're doing this in Claylands because there's not a lot of other people or not a lot of activity in the Claylands. So this is the area that's bounded by the A146, the A11 and the Waveney. And we've started a conversation taking learning from what we've done at Sweetbriar Marshes in Norwich, which has been talking to local people about what they want before we start to do anything. So we've set out the intention to create a long-term vision for this landscape, absolutely in partnership with local people, not overriding others, but working with others. So we've over the last couple of weeks, we've had a number of workshops in local villages and village halls. We've had an online survey out, which has got over 500 responses now. We've had that circulated through parish councils, really trying to understand what people want to see in their landscape over a long period of time. And how we encourage nature's recovery in an actively farmed landscape, not instead of an actively farmed landscape. So what we're trying to do then is, we've done these workshops. We're going to have a round table, some more discussions in the new year. We're working through again that strategic focus of the LNRS, where we should be working, and critically, and maybe particularly controversially, in South Norfolk. For those of you who don't know South Norfolk, there's at least 3 or 4 significant nationally significant infrastructure project solar farm schemes in the landscape at the moment, which will change the landscape very significantly over this period. We have views on that, but equally we recognise that given their NSIPs, they're pretty likely to happen. So the position we're trying to take is how do we get the best for nature and for society out of those, and how are we proactive with those developers? We've also got the pylon route coming down from Norwich to Tilbury through this area. So there's lots of opportunity and risk from working with nationally significant and other infrastructure projects, but we've got to recognise that that's going to happen to some degree. So how can we get the best for nature is a position we're trying to take. And my final focus, I suppose, is this stuff feels pretty challenging at the moment. I've had lots of conversations today with people talking about policy and how the challenges of government policy at the moment is making these decisions really difficult. And we've looked at an investment at the moment which just feels, given what's happened with the nutrient markets effectively being on hold for the planning and infrastructure bill, we can't create a business case for a really brilliant opportunity because the markets are changing and the policy is changing and nobody knows quite what it's going to be. It feels very frustrating. So the impact of the planning and infrastructure bill, part 3 in particular, changes completely the way these markets are going to work. And to a degree, that the strategic focus that the government are trying to bring forward is probably the right thing, but we certainly don't feel that the bill delivers the purpose that it's designed to do. So, recognising though that the government has a large majority, and things are likely to change, we're trying to work constructively with our partners at Natural England to really understand how we can be part of those markets. But I think, make no mistake, these changes are setting all of these conversations back, I think, a few years because of the challenges and the uncertainty they create. We've also got a consultation on biodiversity net gain, and I think more challenging, I think, for us is the sense of the government's rhetoric feeling pretty divisive, I'd probably call it. The builders versus blockers, the traitors thing that was sent out last week, in the sense that if you're in the way of development, you're somehow a traitor or a blocker to social progress, which is certainly not, I think, where the vast majority of people in the UK would see themselves as being. I tend to be an optimist on these things, though, but and I think I'll talk a little bit about devolution being a potential route for that optimism. We've also got the retreat of political consensus on climate change, which is very damaging and very concerning. So there's a lot going on out there that feels like it could be challenging. But one of my, I guess, hopes and pleas, I suppose, from this conversation and this conference is that we are people who are actively interested and involved in these things, and therefore we need to deliver things and make sure that our MPs and our local representatives know and realise this is important for Norfolk. And I've had some really interesting conversations with, I'm a Norfolk ambassador, fellow Norfolk ambassadors and members of the Norfolk Business Board about how absolutely critical the environment and nature are to Norfolk. The business case for Norfolk rests on a lot of the farming economy, the tourism economy, things that we're investing in and we've been talking about today. To devolution then, an opportunity and a risk potentially, but devolution gives us an opportunity to have local decision making on some of these issues, which I think is an opportunity we're certainly trying to seize as an organisation and trying to make the case for those, whoever takes over as Mayor of Norfolk and Suffolk, that these things are important. So finally, I'll come to our looking forwards piece. So next year, I think, is an interesting time for us because we're 100 years old, and our thinking about this says 100 years of trust, 100 years of hope. We're looking forwards as part of our centenary, and one of the things that these kind of conversations make you reflect on is that we're in this for the long term. You know, we've signed up to some 125-year agreements to deliver nutrient neutrality. And I'm thinking my counterparty to that isn't going to exist in 125 years, but we probably are as an organisation because we're here for the long term. So I think that gives us a really unique position to take part in these kind of markets because we have a resilience organisationally that we know we're going to be here and we know we're going to still be needed. And I'm delighted to say that in 2026 we're going to be launching our new Norfolk Wildlife Trust advisory offer, which kind of brings all the skills we've got in land management and advice across our consultancy, our land management services and our nature recovery teams, and increasingly our engagement teams, our community engagement teams. We're going to be bringing all that together as an offering to the market. So please do look out for that. And I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts. One, which I've written up there, which I feel sometimes we must not allow ourselves to be blinded to long-term developments by the intensity of short-term difficulties. And I'm sure they do feel like there are some short-term difficulties at the moment, but I think there's enough long-term potential for these markets to take us forwards. And I will leave you with, for those of you who didn't see, the Bishop of Norwich succeeded in an amendment to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill on Monday evening around chalk streams to bring some degree of chalk stream protection. Which is fantastic, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an excerpt from his speech. He said, "What we love, we should desire to protect. What we value, we should safeguard. What is of global significance, we should be deeply proud." Thank you very much.